Leeds, Leeds, Leeds.
What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
So I always thought that I was quite creative when I was younger. At school I liked doing things like drama and writing and just generally messing about actually. And my mum had quite a sort of, I mean this in a nice way, but quite a hands-off approach to parenting. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of freedom, there was a lot of opportunity to do what I wanted. You know, if I wanted to do a dance class, or if I wanted to just run around the streets like a wild thing, or if I wanted to sit and read a book for 3 days, she would just allow that. And I think when I was growing up, I actually don't think I wanted to be anything because there was no pressure for me to have made that decision. Mm-hmm. So I remember being asked, what do you want to be? You know, sitting down with a careers counsellor and them saying, but what do you want to do? I thought, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. Why do I have to do stuff? Yeah, I need to make a decision about this. So I'd done a bit of drama at school and I saw that there was a course at Park Lane College mm-hmm. in drama. Mm-hmm. I thought, oh yeah, I could do that because I just get to mess about and pretend to be other people for a bit. I wasn't actually very good at drama. I love the idea of it, but I actually didn't have a talent for acting. I didn't let that stop me though. I just thought, I'm going to do this course. I'm going to be an actor. Be great. Yeah, I'll just be an actor. So I did my course. I really enjoyed it. I made loads of good friends and I just really enjoyed that world mm-hmm. of theatrics. And I thought, oh, right, okay, I'm not actually very good at acting. Maybe I could be a director. Mm-hmm. So I thought, right, I'm going to be a director. And as I kind of went through college, I saw that actually there was lots of other aspects to theatre. And perhaps it wasn't directing, perhaps it was writing that I liked. Mm. And years ago I used to love to read, I still do love to read, but I used to read loads and loads of books and then I would write my own stories. And I quite enjoyed that. And I was always quite good at English. It was probably the only GCSE that I passed with any credible grade. And I thought, actually, I could write. Mm. I'm quite good at writing. Maybe I'm good at writing. I can write a poem. Occasionally people had said, oh, that's quite good. So I was like, oh, maybe I could be a writer. So when I finished college, I loved Leeds and I didn't want to leave Leeds. Mm-hmm. So I just thought, oh, right. I looked around and I saw a course for creative writing at Leeds Uni. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, I'll do that then. So I applied and I got in. And I did 3 years of creative writing. I thought, that's great. I still didn't know what I wanted to be at this point. I was still just bumbling around and doing bits and bobs. And I came out at the end of that course realising that I actually probably wasn't going to be a writer because I actually wasn't good enough to be a journalist or a script writer or a screenwriter or any of the writers.
Was that like based on the class and you were kind of like, you were looking at other people's work going, oh, was it that or was it just what they were teaching or?
It was a bit of everything really. I didn't think that I was excelling at writing. Mm-hmm. I thought it was quite good, but I wasn't the best. Mm. And I could see that becoming a writer was going to be a long, arduous process and very competitive. So when I left uni, I kind of fell into setting up a company with my mum.
Okay.
Which was my first business. So my grandma had been diagnosed with cancer and didn't have actually very long to live. It was quite a shock, actually, ovarian cancer. And so we kind of found out, and then she'd gone, actually. And she wasn't religious at all. She had no interest in that. And we looked around for somebody to conduct the ceremony. So we knew that we didn't want it to be religious. And we found a humanist, lovely guy, came and met with us, and we told him everything about her life, this lovely, long, wonderful life that she'd had full of, lots of lovely stories. And, I felt like we kind of poured our heart out to him. And then we didn't hear from him after that until the day of the funeral. And on the day of the funeral, we got there, and I'm not sure what we were expecting, but I think because we told him so many wonderful stories about her, I think we kind of expected to be on the receiving end of a lovely eulogy, something about her life story. And actually what the ceremony was quite functional and kind of, Jean was born on this day and she had this many children and she likes to, and it was very clunky. And I don't want to do him a disservice. I'm sure that style is great for lots of families, but for us, it didn't quite fit. And so afterwards we talked about it and we said, well, what was missing from that ceremony? And we realized that it was the story, it was the ability for that person to have captured her life and be able to write it down and deliver it back to us in a way that sounded like her. So it resonated with us and we were like, oh yeah, that's just her. So we thought, well, let's just do it ourselves. Let's do it. Like, why can't we conduct these ceremonies? So we set up a company together, quite naively, just with no money and not really knowing what we were doing. And we called it One Life Ceremonies because we believe that everybody has one life. And what you do with that is, if you're religious, you're religious. If you're not. But those key moments in somebody's life, so a funeral, or even getting married, or having a baby naming. So we realised that actually a lot of people were having babies, but because they're not religious, forgo that sort of celebratory...
the ceremony, yeah.
So they could only have a christening. So what was the alternative? So we thought, well, what about baby naming? So the business was built on this idea, and the foundations of it were writing. It was all about sitting with a family or a couple and listening to what they said, and then being able to write down in a really...
In a human way.
Something when they heard it back, they thought, oh, yeah, got that. You've captured their life, or you've captured our relationship, or you've captured how we feel about becoming parents.
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 10, and to my guest, Laurra Davis. This is another in-person interview recorded on the Rode Wireless Go 2, recorded on the 7th of May 2024 and edited by Laurra Davis. Laurra Davis is the founder and creative director of Leeds-based social media agency Brilliant. They manage social media accounts for some of the UK's best food and drink brands and celebrate their 13th year in business this month. At Brilliant, Laurra oversees the creative output of the agency and has a strong focus on tone of voice for brands and delivering that through social media content and advertising. Laurra has lived in Leeds from the age of 2 and studied theatre and creative writing, going on to form her first business called One Life Ceremonies with her mum when she was 23 years old, bringing her writing skills to life through personally written and conducted ceremonies, including funerals, baby namings, and weddings. Through running One Life, Laurra found a talent for social media marketing and became well known as someone who knew what they were doing with Twitter and LinkedIn. So back in 2011, she started a side business of social media training, which went on to become Brilliant. Laurra is also a co-founder of B-corp certified sustainable product design agency 5 Create. They are the team behind the multi-award winning air purification unit called Briiv, which is the world's most sustainable air purifier. Alongside looking after her 2 children, she's also a trustee for the Leeds Library, which is the oldest surviving subscription library of its type in the UK. Right, let's do this. Episode 120 of Working Hours with Laurra Davis.
So that's kind of how I started on the journey of writing it creatively. And I would do some of the writing. Maria, my mum, she would do a lot of the writing as well. She's very creative, and she would also deliver the ceremonies. So we'd kind of built this business based on what I love doing, which was writing.
So what happened with that business? Like, how far did you take that? Was it viable business wise? Was there what were the issues? Was it just it wasn't fitting you right, or?
So we ran One Life for 6 years, and it was an interesting time because there were a lot of secular celebrants that were kind of popping up, and we were kind of in the mix of that. Although we didn't refer to ourselves as celebrants, we called ourselves ceremony conductors, just because I didn't really like the word celebrant. But that's
But also it distinguishes you in the market as well, because you've got slightly different products.
So we did quite well, particularly around weddings. So at the time, you couldn't have a wedding outdoors and have that be a legal wedding. So what that meant was that a couple could go to the registry office, they could do the paperwork, and then they would be free to have a wedding wherever they wanted. And so we realised that as long as there was some vows, a ring exchange, an I do, and a kiss, that's what people came to see. You know, the signing of the piece of paper is kind of irrelevant, really. So we quite quickly realised that people did want to get married outdoors. And it was at the time when, you know, the social media was kind of getting started. So people were seeing weddings from America or weddings from Australia on beaches and in parks and in gardens and thinking, oh my God, like I want
Why
that.
am I in a dark church?
Why am I in a dark church? I'm not even religious. So we were able to offer outdoor weddings, and we teamed up with a lot of wedding venues and stately homes and, you know, even private gardens where people could use them to have their wedding there. So on the wedding side of things, we actually did quite well. But our heart was very much in funerals because that's where the idea had come from. And that was something that we really felt, and still actually feel to this day, is not being done justice. So a lot, you know, we could see that a lot of people were going to a funeral director, you know, just having lost somebody and saying, well, what do we do? And the funeral director saying, well, we'll just book the crematorium on this day and the vicar will come and do his service, and, you know, and then you'll go and have your sandwiches and off you go. And that's done.
It's not supposed to be a process. It's like the whole point of it is it's a ceremony, it's a ritual, it's something that's like a part of human culture. You can't just package it and...
Exactly. And I think package is a really apt term for what it is, actually. It's very functional. It's very transactional. And it's very easy to get caught up in kind of being taken through that process without questioning it. Because you're in you're mourning.
You're not right. You're grieving, you know.
You're grieving. You want to do what's best. So you kind of go along with it. And it's only when you come out at the other end you think...
And you want it to be easy as well, because you've got so much to deal with.
Absolutely.
Like, and it all has to be done. There's no avoiding it. You can't push it to one side. Like, it has to be done. You have to go through it. It's like, this is really hard, just getting up, and then I have to do all this. Please make it easy.
Yeah. And that's, you know, again, you know, it's not to do a disservice to funeral directors who are doing a fantastic job. But I do think there's you've got the crematorium for 20 minutes, you're in and out, and the next family are coming in, and please move on your way. So we saw that if we could just spend time with the family and listen to them and hear what they wanted to say about the person that they've lost and capture that life in word form could be quite important, actually. There's a lot of emotion in a funeral, and I think for it to be done well, and by well I mean where the family and the friends go, oh, yeah, that feels right, that feels like, then actually helps with the grieving process. So we came up against quite a lot of resistance from funeral directors because we were messing with the process. We were getting in the way of how it should be done. We were demanding double slots at the crematorium. We wanted more time. We wanted, and at the same time, we were educating ourselves about funerals, about options. Did you know you could have a cardboard coffin? Did you know you don't have to have flowers? Did you know you can do it outside? Did you know all these things? And the families would go, no, we didn't know. And the funeral directors were like, shut up.
Yeah, we've got a process here. We guide them to these expensive products.
And it's sad to say that, we did struggle with the, getting funerals going as well, because, it was something we were very passionate about. We had a lot of, funeral directors didn't really like us getting involved.
It's quite time intensive as well. It's like charging for it. It's difficult because you want to provide that. There's a level of service there that you need, which requires time and patience and understanding, and that doesn't fit very well into a financial product.
No, it doesn't. So we did, we were very happy with where we got One Life, but the space was both too competitive and not progressive enough. I set One Life up when I was 23, so 17 years ago. Has it moved forward that much more now? No, not really. So even then, we were probably a little ahead of our time. And even now, I think people are still getting married in churches when they're not religious. They're still having their children christened. They're still getting the vicar to come and stand over them, giving them the last rites, even though they've never been to church. Things haven't changed that much. But what One Life did give me was the tools to start the business that I have now.
And the experience as well.
And the experience, of having run a business, having set it up from scratch, having come up with a name for it and branded it and marketed it with no money at all. And at the time, which was kind of in sort of 2009, 2010, there was this Twitter thing, this weird thing that everybody was getting on, and LinkedIn, and there was quite a lot of excitement about it. What's it going to be? And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. Sounds like I could use it to market my business. So I signed up for Twitter and started to tweet and all that stuff. And it was kind of in like the golden era of social media, where you could literally be on Twitter and make business happen from it. I could reach out to a wedding venue and say, is it all right if I just pop in next week and have a chat with you about this thing that we're doing with outdoor weddings? And they would be like, yeah. And there I'd be. It was just so easy to kind of make really valuable and really important connections through Twitter. So I just started using it, and at the same time I thought, right, well, I quite like learning new stuff. So I was like, I'm going to learn how to do this. So I would go on like social media training courses and like sit there with my notepad just thinking, oh my God, just like fill me up with all the information that you have. And started to use social media to market One Life. And then in the wedding industry, people were like, oh my God, like, Laura, how do you know what you're doing on this? Like, how are you doing this? Will you teach me how to do it? I thought, yeah, why not? I'll teach you how to do it. And I'd been on quite a few training courses in social media, and they were all kind of delivered in quite a similar way. So they were all typically in a room. Class-based, yeah. So
one person to however many.
Exactly, yeah. So somebody at the front explaining about social media,
Here's the blackboard, look up here.
Yeah.
Here's my projection.
And I would look around the room and there'd be people
Everyone
there
asleep.
like... Yeah, but no, not even that. There'd be people like almost in tears going, I can't, what? This is so complex and so confusing for me. And then somebody else would be like, well, this is too basic. Of course I know how to do this. And I realised, I thought, oh, right, okay, so like people are asking me to train them. Mm-hmm. I could do that one-to-one. Mm-hmm. So I could be like a one-to-one social media teacher, because actually what else is on offer are these kind of bigger events where the person leading it is fantastic and, is able to, talk about social media. But the problem is they don't know where they're pitching it. For some people, it's way too complicated, and for others it's way too basic,
which means that nobody gets what they want out of it, because it's not advanced enough for the advanced people and it's not basic enough for the basic people.
Exactly.
So you get this middle, and then no one goes away with anything, really.
Yeah. So I started offering one-to-one social media training. I called my first ever business twitterclasses.co.uk, because I managed to get the URL. I was like, this is brilliant. I'm going to be a millionaire because I've got www.twitterclasses.co.uk. But then I realised actually that people didn't just want to learn Twitter, they wanted to learn more. So I changed it to be called Social Media Classes. And I started offering one-to-one social media training. And it was great. And I thought, actually, this is a kind of nice... I found a nice niche here. Because a lot of people... everybody needed to learn it, and nobody knew how to use it, and there were no online courses. So I thought, right, well, I'm just going to do this, and I started networking, which I've never really done before, and I got some cards printed. I was like, I'm going to go networking, and I went networking, and I met a great guy called Paul Dodd. Who is a branding and design expert. And I could see him over the other side of the room, and he had a bright purple suit on. And he came up to me and he said, I'm the ideas man. And I said, I'm the social media whiz. And after that stuck. So I would go networking and people say, oh, what do you do? And I'd say, I'm a social media whiz. And they'd go, social media, and then turn into a pile of sand on the floor. And I would sweep them up and say, it's okay. I'll show you how to do it. Don't worry. And it grew from there because, people just be desperate.
Demand,
Yeah, people were desperate to know how to do it. And I would teach a lot of women. Now, that wasn't intentional. It wasn't intentional that I would kind of market this towards women, but I found that there were a lot of women who were, let's say, a PA, a secretary, an office admin, and their boss had gone, yes, you'll do that, Janet. Off you go. And Janet had gone, oh, shit, I don't know how to do this. My boss has told me I need to suddenly start doing Twitter and LinkedIn and running a Facebook page, and I don't know what I'm doing. And so I would be able to work with those women at their level. So I remember spending an hour with one lady who had never even heard of Amazon or eBay, and we had a great time. Me explaining that all of this stuff was going on the internet. We did not even get to any training. And that was really nice because I think I got a lot of satisfaction from being able to guide people at their pace through something which was very complicated at the time.
Yeah, but I think it's also, the reason it's been so successful is because it's also shiny and fun.
And I think the thing that I always loved about social media was that it felt like a bit of a level playing field. So if you were a business, let's say you sold chocolate bars, you could set up a Twitter account and a Facebook account And you could be, it's not quite the same now, but back then you could be on a level playing field and you would be able to drive your business forward in an organic way using this thing that was basically free. I just thought that was brilliant. I just thought, wow, you know, how exciting for businesses to be able to suddenly be present and compete. I always thought it was, you know, back in the early days of Brilliant, we used to work with a lot of challenger brands, you know, brands that like, yeah, come on, we're going to take on the big guys. And they actually could. They actually could take on the big guys because there wasn't really social media advertising.
They were more nimble and you could be nimble in the space because it wasn't as...
Yeah. And there wasn't advertising. It wasn't a thing back then. So actually, you could put a post out on Facebook and it get 1,000 likes. I mean, you can't do that now unless you
got a really massive audience.
Exactly, or you pay Mark Zuckerberg a little bit of cash. So I found social media quite an exciting space to be in. I just thought, yeah, this is really interesting. There's kind of quite a lot going on, and not a lot of people know what they're doing on it as well. So we decided to close One Life, and for me to go fully into running this company. And I remember going to a networking event, and it was the famous one where you have to get up at 5 a.m. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can sit in a room with all these people and bring referrals every week and, you know, and stand. I don't even know if I can stand up in front of people and speak. I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I can do that. It was £1,000 to join. Oh my God, I was almost in tears handing that over, just thinking, if this doesn't work, I'm screwed. You know, this is literally all the money that I've got. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to join this networking event. I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to stand in a room full of people and I'm going to do it. And I did. And it was very successful. I managed to meet lots of really brilliant people who, firstly, needed to know about social media, but also helped me to understand how to build a business. So it wasn't just me and my mum, you know, having a lovely little business. It was like, oh, actually, you could have a proper business here. You could have staff. You could have an office. You know, it sort of opened my eyes to me being a business owner. I could do that. I'm allowed to do that. And back to the first question of what did I want to be, there was no pressure for me to be anything. So there was, you know, I didn't come from a family where it was like, you have to be a teacher or, you know, you need to study law, or thank God, because I'm not academic in any way. So that wouldn't have worked out too well.
Get a trade.
Yeah, you need a trade. And I think about the two main businesses that I've had, and neither of them are what you would call like a normal business. They're two businesses that I've just created out of thin air because I saw a need in the market for both of those things. And I guess I've never thought, oh, I can't do that. I won't be able to do that. I've just thought, I'll just work it out. That'll be fine. I'll just be able to work that out. And what I've kind of acquired over the past sort of 20 years is probably a load of random skills in lots of different things, because if I can't do it, I'll just go and learn it a little bit until I can. And so I do have my mum to thank for that, because I think you have to have a level of autonomy growing up and the belief that it's okay if you mess up, or you don't actually have to be successful. Like life is not about being successful. You don't have to achieve anything in order to have a good life. So I've never had that in the back of my mind, like I have to make somebody proud, or I have to earn a certain amount of money, or I have to be seen as this type of person. I've never had that because I've never had that pressure. And I do think that, you know, on some level, I kind of knew that I'd be all right because no one's going to let me fall to the bottom.
Yeah, you're not going to be kicked out onto the street.
But that wasn't a financial thing. It wasn't like, oh, I've got rich parents. I can, you know, I I can just do whatever I want. It was definitely not that, because I didn't have that. It was more
But you have the security of a home where, like, they want you and, like, they support you. And,
yeah. So even if it all failed, I knew that I could do something.
Yeah.
So I was a waitress for years and years and years, and I always had in the back of my mind, well, I'll just go and be a waitress again. I've failed quite a lot. You know, I've had a lot of failure, but I've always just gone, okay, all right. Let's just carry on anyway, because I've never let it hurt me so much that I've not wanted to carry on in anything I've done. And even when One Life, you know, clearly was just not gonna happen. You know, we just weren't gonna be able to turn it into what we had dreamt we could. I was able to kind of pack that up and just think, no, we did enough, because we helped a lot of people get through a time, or, you know, on an emotional level, we did a lot, even if we didn't on a financial level.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that was important.
Yeah. We've got sort of how you got here. I think what you do now, we need to draw out a little bit more. So you're not training the social media people one-to-one anymore, are you?
I'm not.
So what is it that you're doing now?
So having done a lot of the training, I realised that people also could be trained and still not want to do it themselves. So again, this happened quite early on, where I would train somebody, or somebody would inquire about training, and I would go to do it, and they'd say, actually, could you just not do it for us? Could you not just do our social media? I thought, yeah, of course I can. I'll do it for you. So in the world of social media, we call that managed services. We're just managing a brand or a person's social media. And I tell you what, it's quite hard. It's quite a hard job.
I can imagine straight off a whole bunch of issues with that, because how much time do you spend on it, and what do you charge for that time?
Yeah.
Like,
in the early days, I worked way too much and charged nowhere near enough. Of course, like probably every business owner would always say. And I think, you know, it's interesting now when I look at the agency itself. So now I run a social media agency, and we have 15 staff who are doing all of the elements required to produce that social media content. From coming up with the idea, writing the copy, doing the design or the photo, doing community management, which is where you basically respond to people, or, you know, you're proactively kind of in conversation.
If you have a post that takes off, you can be spending all your time on that.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, when you were doing that on your own, that must have been a nightmare.
I think because I did do everything. I did every single element of social media management for a number of clients. And it was incredibly hard, because you are, you know, taking different hats off and putting different hats on, and then you're trying to get somebody to pay an invoice, and, you know, you're trying to work out how you're going to actually eat tomorrow. And it was very difficult to kind of grow it, because I was also learning how to build a business at the same time. And I hired somebody. I was like, I'm going to hire somebody part-time.
What was your first hire then? Who did you go for first?
So it was somebody to take on some of the elements that I was doing. So she came, and she would, so we were basically like two of us doing the same thing. And I would get to the end of every month, and I would say, I'm so sorry, but can I pay you in 2 halves, because I don't have any money.
Pay you in stamps.
And that was a real learning. It's, you know, as soon as you take a member of staff on, you are
responsible for someone's life.
and it's them who has to come first. It was very difficult, because I knew that I was onto something, and I really wanted to do a good job. You know, I wasn't prepared to. There were like things you could get where it would just spit out a load of tweets for you, and I just thought, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, it won't work.
It won't work.
No, exactly.
It won't connect with anyone, because there's no humanity to it.
And I just wanted to do a good job. I just wanted everything to be done so well that, yeah, I mean, I did manage to pay it most often in 2 chunks, actually. And after a couple of years, my then boyfriend, who is now my husband, came into the business to help basically get people to pay. So it's really cringe, awful. Like when you're trying to get money, you know, especially in the early days where you're just so nice. Oh, I'm so sorry to even ask, but would it be all right if you could just, you know, that all that work that I've just done for you?
Is it okay if I eat?
Would you mind just actually paying me for that work?
Can I live in a house, please?
Yeah. And it's a combination of like being British and, you know, being female and just like being a bit like, oh God, I don't want to ask for money. Anyway, he didn't feel that way. So he came in and got everybody to pay and then started to help out with the systems and eventually became part of the business, still works in the business now. And we're still married, right? So, you know, it's all, it's all fine. But that was quite an interesting time because what he brought into the business was the systems, you know, let's do it this way. Let's do some business coaching. And we decided that we would, so alongside the networking, which was paying off, despite my £1,000 investment in it, which I was absolutely mortified at, it was paying off. And so we decided to start doing some business coaching, and I had a mentor, and I had this, you know, I had a lot of people wanting to help me. I think there were people around the outskirts going, we think you can do what you're trying to do, Laura, like, let's just help you to move forward, which I'm really grateful for, actually, because a lot of people gave their time for free to me, or this is what I would also do. I love to swap. So I was like, you need social media, I need a brand, or you need social media, I need, you know, some mentoring. Should we just swap? And we did, you know, time for time.
Time banking.
Absolutely. It's brilliant. When you first start in a business, why not?
Exactly.
Why not swap?
Yeah, you're going to need people, and like there's plenty of areas of business.
Yeah, I would always recommend that to anybody thinking of starting a business is if you don't have cash, which most people don't actually, it's quite rare for people to have a lot of money at the start of starting something, then swap your skills. You know, what can you actually give? And it doesn't have to be what your business does. It could be just a different skill you've got. And, you know, I think Leeds is a great place for that type of support and that type of help. The business community is quite compact. And things like LinkedIn, to go back to social media, is brilliant for staying on the radar of people. You're just there, popping up in their feed. You're just reminding them that you exist. It's a really powerful platform. Again, like networking just generally is such a good investment, you know, even just in time, like being out and meeting people. And I remember reading a book called The Jelly Effect by a guy called Andy Bounds. The title comes from basically when you're talking to somebody about what you do, most people just chuck a load of stuff, a bit like throwing jelly at a wall and hoping some of it sticks. And he always said, like, you need to be able to describe what you do in seconds so that the person on the receiving end gets it. And it's not about what you do, it's about how you help. And that's why I think that idea of being a social media whiz, I would always say, I help people to understand social media and how to use it for their business.
It's that, I know the name of the person on LinkedIn that does the training, but it's that thing of like, your pitch should be like, what problem do you solve? Because that's the only thing anyone's interested in.
Yeah.
It's like, not everyone will have the problem that you want the solution for. But if and when it does occur, you want to be thought of as the solution.
Exactly. Yeah. You buy white teeth, not toothpaste.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think being able to, you know, a lot of people still to this day find social media quite daunting. And it feels quite wild. It feels
like you can put your foot wrong really easily. I think that's the impression people
Absolutely. Put your foot wrong really easily, or you need to spend a whole bunch of money, or you need hundreds of thousands of followers. And when people say, like, what do you sell? I always say, well, we sell peace of mind, right? So a lot of what we do for the brands that we work with is help them feel, oh, thank God for that. Like, phew, we don't have to think about that anymore. Because actually, even thinking about social media and how to market on there and how to do it right is exhausting. it's exhausting for a lot of people. I felt like at the time as well, there was a lot of smoke and mirrors. So one of the things that I always thought brilliant should stand for was a bit like so the word brilliant, I always wanted to be more like, like a brilliant diamond, rather than like, oh, we're brilliant.
Yeah.
Because a brilliant diamond is kind of, it's clear, it's transparent. You're not hiding anything. It just is. And it's a bit sparkly as well. And so one of our values is about being clear. Are we explaining things in a way that people understand? And that comes back from my training days, because there was no point in me explaining about this weird and wonderful world of social media to somebody who'd literally hardly even got an email account yet. So it was very much about cutting out the jargon that was flying around. A lot of SEO companies just chatting absolute gibberish, and lording over clients like, oh, you will never understand this. This is way too complicated for you. And I just think people want to understand what they...
Yeah, they just want to explain clearly.
Yeah, explain it clearly, remove the jargon. You don't have to talk down to anybody. And also, you don't have to talk to people like they're 5 years old either. Like, you can use analogies and metaphors to explain about this type of stuff, which works quite well. And, I think that, one of the things in the world of marketing is a lot of acronyms, and we kind of just didn't want to be like that. We just wanted to be quite straightforward and just, maybe it's that element of being a bit northern, right? So when you're in the north, just say what you're going to say. Just say it. And that's kind of what I've always wanted, and kind of try and get the team to do as well, is just say what you're trying to say and deliver it in a way that the person on the receiving end will understand. And if they love a bit of jargon, give them the jargon, but don't give that to somebody who can't hear it. And I hate this idea of like, oh, well, we are the agency, so we know best. Oh, don't you worry about that. You just pay the invoice. I don't like that. I think collaboration, particularly with things like social media, is so important, because if we are representing that brand online, if we are going to be their voice, if we are their team, then...
Yeah, you've got to be literally on the same page.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's jump into questions. I'll just have a quick look at time. So let's start with COVID. So what I want to look at here is going into the lockdown. How did that affect your work? Was it a big increase? Did it drop off? Did it stay the same? And then coming out of COVID, what changed for you? Was there anything that sort of changed permanently? I mean, it seems to be mostly online working and things like that seems to be what has changed. But yeah, for you, what was the experience?
So I guess the first thing that happened was that everything stopped.
Were you doing any preparatory work, or was it kind of like we worked as normal and then Boris said, don't come in, and then everything was like, oh no, what do we do now?
We set the scene, so we made sure that everybody had a laptop, everybody...
You were kind of prepared
we were well prepared for it. I think we even did like a couple of days at home just to try it out. Hey, if this happens, let's just give it a go. So we were kind of all set up for it, and it was fine. I remember on the day we all just kind of gathered round, and then we were like, okay, well, see you in however many weeks, months, days, we don't know. Okay, bye. So we kind of, as far as like preparing for it logistically, we were all right. What we hadn't prepared for was a couple of things, really. I think we knew that the clients were going to stop. They're going to want to pause everything until they worked out how to say, we care about you. We're all in this together.
We're in this together over here first, and then we'll be in it together with you.
Yeah. So, and that was fine, and in fact, that gave us a little bit of breathing space, because we were actually able to, not think, oh God, right, we have to send all these posts out and everything. So having that moment of pause was good. But then a couple of things happened. Like we had a couple of clients who were just like, okay, now we're not going to pay anybody. So we've just decided that we're not going to pay anybody. And we're like, all right, well, actually, if you don't pay us, then like we're not going to, there won't be a business at the other end, and that was quite unnerving actually, because you suddenly realise that you could be at the mercy of, we're not thank God, like we're not in that stage now. But at the time, you know, it wasn't, there wasn't as much of a buffer, right, as we have now. Now we have a big buffer because we're like, let's never let that happen again. So that happened, and we were worried, you know, we thought, oh God, right, okay, well, if they're not going to pay, and then...
I mean, there's nothing you can do about that apart from take them to court.
And our other clients, are they going to just stop? And if they stop, well, what will happen? And so, sadly, we had to make a couple of redundancies, which it was awful. It was just awful to have to do that. And it was before, you know, furlough. So that was, you know, as you can imagine, awful for culture. There was a lot of blame because... I think we were expected to know exactly
but you had to respond to the circumstances.
So it was difficult. But then what happened was everybody went online and everybody started eating food. And the brands we work with are all food and drink. So our niche as an agency is food and drink. So all of a sudden, the brands we were working with were like, we need to do more. And brands we'd never worked with before were like, we've not even been online for 5 years, but we need to be on social media now. So all of a sudden we had lots of work, lots of little bits of work, little campaign here, a little ad bit here, a little do this. And so we'd gone from being like, oh God, you know, we have to like make the team small, to being like, oh my God, we've got to make the team big to be able to deliver this. And so we had to scale up quite quick. Scaling up a business with people that have not formed bonds is what I'll probably say, because they're not in the office together. And then also, you know, hiring people who may have been made redundant in another role. And then in truth, it wasn't a good mix. But we got through it, you know, we got through it. And I think COVID brought a lot of people was how to be super resilient, how to pick yourself up, dust yourself down and keep going. You know, and I know I'm friends with a lot of people who work in agencies who own other agencies in Leeds, and we had all mostly similar experiences where everybody got loads of work all of a sudden, maybe not a great team culture for a bit, and then, you know, coming out the other end going, oh my God, like, did that actually happen? And we've survived. And not everybody survived, and that, you know, and I mean, in terms of work and businesses, not all businesses survived, and we did. We managed it, and I'll always be proud of that it was really tough. Personally, I just had a baby. So I had a newborn baby and a 4-year-old, and had also decided to renovate a 4-story property all at the same time, plus all of that, and then working remotely.
Which is plenty to take on before a global pandemic.
Yeah. So I think we just came out the other side feeling more able to deal with anything, actually. I don't really sort of talk about this much, and I probably should a bit more, but they're sort of coming out because, you know, like, we can put a start on lockdown, but we can't put a start on opening up. I mean, are you all back in the office now, or have you moved to hybrid? So pre-COVID, we were definitely everybody in the office, 9 to 5:30 kind of vibe. I'm quite into my health, and I was very big on like sleep. I still am, right? I still am. But like circadian rhythms, and making sure that people could come to work in line with their circadian rhythms. So, you know, if you wanted to start work at 10, that would be okay. And so we kind of had like the initial elements of that already, where there was a level of flexibility, but it was very much office-based. After COVID, we just said, you can do what you want in terms of working from home or not. We didn't have, you have to be in the office, you don't have to be in the office. We just had, come when you want. And you know what we found? Most people came almost every day. Because you know where people didn't want to be anymore? Home. Yeah. So the office becomes more of a workspace, a sanctuary where you can actually go and have headspace from your life, and then your home is where you can have headspace from your work.
I think that's a really, really, really important point. And the way that you phrased it as well, you know, because I've had people talking about, you know, you must have heard the thing of kind of putting on a suit and tie to work at your computer at home or whatever. And people have had those, you know, another person that I spoke to, they're like, I'd walk around the block and I walk one way in the morning, one way in the evening. So I've got that. I'm getting into the headspace. Having that as like an actual designated separate space that's important for people of like, this is my work life, my home. Because I've never thought about it like that. I've always thought about like work life's the kind of thing that you do through the day. You know, you work to live and then your life's outside. But also then if I think of my jobs, there's plenty of jobs where you work is kind of, it's a nice break from that sometimes. And
an office gives so much more. It's the chat. Yeah. What did you do yesterday? Oh, have you seen this did you watch that thing on Netflix? Oh, you know, oh, should we just go and grab lunch together? Oh, it's those little moments cannot be recreated over Teams. And the ability just to listen in on someone's conversation and just chip in a little bit, or then like get on with your own work, or just like get up and make coffee and, you know, not be like, oh, no, I have to put my washing out at the same time. It's just really important stuff. And I found it really interesting to look at all, and I still find it very interesting to look at all the arguments of like, oh, we should all be working from home. And also, you know, for younger people, almost being told you should be demanding to work from home. You shouldn't be forced into the office. And actually, when you're getting started in your career, the last place you should be is in your bedroom. You should be in an office, because when you're there, you're going to be able to learn, listen in, might be able to be in that meeting and take notes and learn a little bit more. And clients come in and now you're learning about how to like be professional, and then your boss has just asked if you want to like listen in on his call or be on this pitch. Like those little moments you don't get, because you can't get if you're not there. But at the same time, I don't believe that everybody should be sitting at their desk from 9 to 5:30.
No.
Because I think one thing that I'm grateful to COVID for is for opening my eyes to the fact that we don't have to be sitting. And so a couple of years ago, actually, we introduced a 4.5 day work week. So there was a lot of chat around about, companies going to 4 days, and it's going to change the world, and everybody. And this is the thing, and I always, maybe I spend too much time on LinkedIn, but it's always like everybody should do it this way, and there's no in between. You either agree or you don't agree. It's that idea that like one size fits all, and that everybody must agree with this way. So the 4.5 day work week thing was interesting, because I was looking at it, I was thinking, that looks great. But then I was applying it to what we do and thinking, because we have to be online every day responding to customer service inquiries and community management, how would we do that? What would happen on that day where nobody's in, or some people are in and other people are not? So I can't see how that can work. But I thought 4.5 days, we could. So we did this little survey where we looked at the periods of time where our clients are least active and our team most want to not be here, or be at home. So unsurprisingly, that was Monday mornings when, people are our Monday mornings were just full of meetings, and Friday afternoons. So we looked at the week and we said, well, what if we start at 10:30 on a Monday? And what if we finish at 3 on a Friday? Well, that's half a day back for all of our team. It's about 26 extra days off a year per person. So we were like, we're going to try it, said to the clients, there's just a trial. Don't worry. Actually, they were very responsive to it. And most said, oh, God, I wish we could do this, actually. And that was 2 years ago. And it's been really successful, actually. It's really surprising that even that, it's an hour and a half on a Monday, what a difference that makes to people's well-being. No matter how much you love your work, Monday morning always feels
If you can avoid that rush hour, your Monday is so much better.
Yeah. And on the Friday, if you finish at 3 on a Friday, actually one of our team members described this really well. They said, my weekend is protected. So I can actually go somewhere on Friday, like actually go out of Leeds. I can even come back on Monday morning And that's, I think, really important, because we do only get 2 days. And if you have the full 2 days, it can be quite life-changing. I found it quite life-changing, actually.
But it's that, this is something we've touched on before, but it's that ebb and flow thing, and it's like the machine wants to run at a constant rate, and the accountant wants the machine to run at a constant rate. But we're biological creatures, we're not machines. You need to have a full rest to work fully again as well. So you need that clear space so that you can think about problems. And problems are new. Like if you're deep in a particular issue, you step back and you come back, and then it's like, oh yeah, that's what I was missing.
And the longer you work does not equal the better your work.
Yeah. And you don't produce at a constant rate either,
no, exactly. And I've never been impressed by people who work late in the night. I just think, well, you're not being effective in your day. And I'm not saying I've not worked way into the early hours of the morning on many, many, many occasions, but I don't think that's not the way to success. That's not the way to show.
It's not good work, is it? Like you said, it's sort of, if you've planned it right, you shouldn't have to be doing that.
Yeah. And things are changing. And I think COVID has done a bit of this. It's kind of set the wheels in motion of people going, I can work in a different way. I don't have to be in an office. I don't have to be working 9 to 6 and then later than that. I don't have to be checking my emails at whatever hour. It can be done differently. Big social experiment that has been has helped me massively in thinking, how could we do this differently? How could we do this type of work differently? Is it possible? It is possible to do it, and stuff can fit into a working week.
So my question around social media is, does it give you the return on investment that you want? Like the amount of time that you put in, do you get the results that you want? And for a lot of people, it's kind of, and obviously why you exist as a business, it's like, no, I hate it. I don't know what I'm doing. And but for other people, they are whizzes with it, and they're very good at getting what they want out of it.
The first thing for me to say is that my personal relationship with social media is probably quite similar to a lot of people who work in social media. Once you've looked behind the curtain, it's quite hard to fully embrace it personally. Once you know what Mark Zuckerberg is up to and, all the algorithms, you just think, oh God, right. The return on investment for social really depends on what it is you're trying to get out of it. Now, for a brand or for a product, it's very simple. Let's say you sell bars of chocolate. You've got a website that sells bars of chocolate. You can use Instagram to tell people that you sell bars of chocolate on your website. They go from Instagram to buy your bars of chocolate. It's very clear. One of the great things about social media is it's very trackable. Everything, like every minute detail, you can find that information out. So your ROI is very trackable. One of the massive misconceptions about social media is that it's free. It's not free for anybody. If you're
there's a big time cost.
Yeah, there's a time cost. So as an individual, as a human being, your payment is you. You are paying in data. Facebook knows everything about you. I'm sure if you're on Facebook, you've probably been served an advert and you think, how does it know that? I remember when I was pregnant and I didn't even tell anybody I was pregnant, and yet I was Facebook knew I was. Well, hello. So, your payment is in your information, and people, weirdly, will just sign our lives away to anything. Oh, T's and C's. Yeah, that's fine. I'll just tick the box. So the reason then, if you want to use social media to grow a business, for example, or to sell something, it can't be free. So if we use Facebook as an example, let's say you sell chocolate bars and you want to sell your chocolate bars through Facebook. So you put a post up and think, whoa, hang on a minute, why is nobody's bought any chocolate bars? My question would be, how much money did you spend to tell people that you sell chocolate bars? And I hear very often, we tried advertising, or, you know, we did all these posts, or we boosted this one post for £500 and nothing happened. But it doesn't work like that. You can't.
I mean, that has to be the way that they have to do it. You know, like it performs a gatekeeping role. Well, why shouldn't they? Why should you get to advertise your local business freely on this site all the time, and then, you know, the big companies have to pay?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's the data and information that these platforms have about individual people is unbelievable. And if you've got a product or a business and you want to get to those type of people, you're damn right you're going to pay for that. Because otherwise they would just be giving it away, wouldn't they? And I think that's, you know, I do hear quite often people say, oh, it didn't work. It didn't work. We did this and that didn't work, or we used this influencer and it didn't work. And sadly, it's a slow game. You have to incrementally keep being consistent, consistently posting, consistently interacting, consistently spending even something, 50 quid, you know, a month, something. Because why would the platform favour you if you just post once a year and expect miracles? It's going to favour the other business that's putting their time and energy into creating the content. And that can be quite hard for people to hear sometimes, because if you've got a business, you're already running the business, you're already doing all of this other stuff. You don't have time to make more content and reels. But
it's also part of the work, isn't it, now?
It is, yeah.
It's part of doing business now.
Yeah, it is, and it can be disheartening. You know?
And it doesn't seem like a core function. It seems like something that's unnecessary, sort of thing. It's like, we're a physical business. We're in the street. People know where we are. People are in the area. They come in when they want, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, but you also have to remind them they've got lots of choice.
Yeah. But the challenge is as well that it's so competitive now. Every brand, every business, every shop, everybody has got a channel, at least one channel. And then you hear stories about, oh, well, this bakery went viral on TikTok and therefore, like, I want that.
Why? We want to be recognised, and that's part of the social media thing, isn't it? It's like, I'm here, see me.
Yeah. You can look at something that you think has been an overnight success. And when you actually look, they've actually been going for 5 years. Or you look at something that's gone viral, but you didn't see the £10,000 they spent in the background on advertising that post. This is what I mean about seeing behind the curtain. When you work in social media, you see how it works. And it feels unfair sometimes, because you go, but that's not fair. Like, they've only just started and they've gone viral. Or that's not fair. Like, we make better brownies than they do. Why aren't our brownies, you know, why have we not become an overnight success? It's not fair, because you can't see what they're putting into it. They might have 10 people behind the scenes creating that one piece of content.
They might have 200 people behind the scenes, reposting it.
They might have an agency doing it. You don't see what is actually going into that. I think it is important to think about, what are you trying to get out of it? Because, like you say, ROI, it means different things to different people. One of the things that I think is quite common is spreading too thin. So particularly for sole traders, going, I need to be on every single channel. Now that is exhausting, you know, to try and be on every channel. So it's very much about thinking, where are my people? Where are they? Are they actually on Facebook? It's all right. It's not uncool to be on Facebook. It's okay. Don't have to be on TikTok. I talked to a lot of people about being on TikTok and see a lot of sighs of relief when you explain that you don't have to be on there.
Yeah, and like, why choose the most competitive one? Like, well, I understand that you want the youth market, but...
So it's, you know, it's very much about picking the platform that's right for you. And I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. I think I see a lot of food
really
brands.
It's improved as well, hasn't it, in the last few years?
Yeah.
Like, post-COVID, like, it got a lot better through COVID, I thought.
I just love all of the amazing advice I can get from LinkedIn. All these wonderful people telling me all these amazing things I didn't know. Yeah, but aside from like all that waffle, you know, there are some a lot of food brands actually are doing really well on LinkedIn because it's just totally untapped. And who have you got there on that channel? Well, you just happen to have a lot of professional people with disposable incomes. Oh, how convenient. So you've got a ready audience who want to see that content in their feed because it's cutting through the noise of this motivational speaker and this. And, you know, it can be free. It actually can be free. And there's no other channel that kind of, well, TikTok maybe, but there's no other channel that is truly free. Yeah, but it can feel like why are we doing this? You know, why are we on these channels? And it's a bit like that thing, you know, years ago when people put flyers through doors and then websites came about and they would go, what do I need a website for? People will just see my flyer and then, oh, and hang on a minute, everybody's getting websites. So hang on, now I need a website. And all of a sudden, like everybody thought, oh my God, I need a website. And now you couldn't even imagine a business not having a website. It's a bit like that with social media.
At what point should people be spending money? Like, at what point do they call you in? Do you want it, like, I mean, do you work with any sort of single businesses, or would it be like you're working with sort of larger SMEs?
So we primarily work with food and drink brands that have a supermarket listing or...
Yeah, so they're going to be fairly big size, yeah.
Nowadays we do.
Yeah.
Historically, we've worked with smaller brands or kind of challenger brands. I think when a business is thinking, you know, when is the right time to call in external help, it's when the business owner or the key people in the business are using all of their time to do something that they could outsource.
Yeah.
That's probably the moment, because it's very time consuming, and also it's quite creative. A lot of business owners are not that way minded.
So do you do the brand creation bit as well? How often are you sort of going to, or are you working with a client and you're sort of unpacking, well, what are you about? What do you want to represent? How do you want to be presented? Have they normally done that work already, or is that something that you kind of help them with as well?
Most brands that we work with have brand guidelines. So they have like, this is how we look, even this is how we sound. And we typically end up creating a kind of new set of guidelines for social media. So how does the social media look? But actually, how does it sound? So a tone of voice. I think tone of voice is so important in social media. Getting it right it can just make the difference between people seeing it and not seeing it. So there's like this term called habituation. Like if you're in a room and there's a smell, eventually you'll stop smelling that smell because you become habitualized to it. Yeah,
like traffic noise.
Yeah, exactly. And the same goes for marketing. So people are habitualized to seeing, click here, subscribe now, you know, did you know, or hey, Friday, and all of that.
One weird trick.
Yeah, exactly. And all of that cliched language that people think, oh, if we're writing social media copy, it needs to sound like that. Put it in, Well, if it sounds like that, people won't even see it because they become so habitualized to seeing that type of content that they will literally not see it. So having quite a nuanced tone of voice can actually make a massive difference to any business, actually. Because if you can write copy that captures somebody's attention in just that first line, it means that they'll want to read more, or they'll want to engage, or they want to feel part of something. And we do put a lot of emphasis on that, Brilliant, because we believe that there's so much crap on social media. There's just so much noise. Like, how can you actually cut through? And there's not really any original ideas anymore. You know, everybody's just kind of regurgitating the same sort of stuff. So, you know, it's the language and it's the words that can have that cut through. And for a while, you know, everybody wanted to be like Innocent until everybody was like Innocent. And now everybody sounds like Innocent. And so everybody sounds the same. Because who wouldn't want a friendly, happy, quirky, slightly irreverent tone of voice. Like, who wouldn't want that, of course? But then,
but you're
everybody,
not them either,
yeah.
though. It's that thing of like when everyone wanted to be the Apple store, and it's like, you're not the apples. Do you sell apples? Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, you're taking the wrong lessons. It's not just be like them. It's like identify what they're doing within their brand. Like, what's working there? What have they nailed? What are the kind of thing? And it's not just being a shop that does this, so therefore we all need to do this.
Yeah, so I think, investing in getting that tone of voice developed can be really pivotal for any business, actually. And that's usually quite a good step. If you've got your own social media channels, like, go and look at them and go, would I read this? Do I give a shit when I read this? And if the answer is no, then just, think about how you could rephrase it and, maybe make it a little bit more interesting. And that's why it's a challenge, because I know, a lot of business owners don't have that skill. Writing is a skill that not everybody, it's not innate to every single person, and it's quite hard to learn as well. So, even if you're getting somebody just to rewrite your copy for you, that's a good first step, or even just to come up with those ideas. What I think is a risk is when you're a business and you think, I'm just going to get an intern. I'm just going to get one of those young people to come in and do all of the social media marketing, and they'll just transform it. So because
they're young and they're a whiz, and they know all about it,
and they know
and
everything.
I don't have to pay them anything, and then it's all free and everything's marvelous.
Yeah, sometimes that works out. Like, I'm not going to say that doesn't always work out, but I think placing the social media marketing solely with somebody who is either fresh out of university or or still at uni, who might be able to like churn out some TikToks but doesn't understand how to craft copy or the nuances of advertising and all of that stuff, is a risk, right? Because then you put this person's going to do it, they're just going to do such a great job. And that can be a challenge, because there's still this idea that social media is a thing that young people do, or that should be done by one person inexpensively. And to create a good social media post, it's got copy, it's got design, it's got creative thought, it's got the whole thing has been crafted and then put on the right channel and format and all that stuff.
But that's what we think about as well. That's another one of those things of like, we think about the post, don't we? But it's as much, the post is there to create the conversations, create the engagement, to get the people on there, to drive them to wherever you want to drive them.
It's yeah, and it is hard. It's hard to think, well, how am I going to stand out? I'm just one person, or I'm just one business. How am I actually going to make my content cut through? Yeah, and I think consistency is the key. And that, unfortunately, does mean going on there every day, not necessarily posting every day, but interacting, sharing a story, responding to people. You will be rewarded by the platform, because the platform would like you to be on there as much as possible, so that it can show you adverts that other people have paid for you to see. You've got to play the game as well. You've got to feed the monster, feed the machine.
So, the question is, if you could change any 3 things about your work right now, what would they be? You can be pragmatic, you can be fantastic, you can change the world, you can change your life fittings, whatever.
Yeah.
So what would you change if you could?
If there could be a rule that everybody had to put their phone away at 6:30 in the evening and not get it out again until 9 a.m. the following day, and that was a universal deal that we all made, I think the world would be a much nicer place. Because I think one of the big challenges with working in this type of industry is the never switching off. Always being online. We've worked really hard here, like I said, about the 4.5-day work week, to encourage people to switch off and take their time. We don't do weekend interactions. So that means that our team are not expected to be online at the weekend. Now, that's not always been the case. Years ago, we had clients where we would be tweeting and responding in the evenings and at weekends. And that's taken a long time to get rid of, actually. And I see there are a lot of freelance social media managers who are doing what I've just described. They are believing that they're having a great life being a freelance social media manager, working with clients, but they're not switching off because they are responding at the weekend. They are putting stories up in the evening, believing that that's what the client wants. They need to see that I'm active. And it's a myth, you know, and we are proof of that you don't have to do that. But it's hard to switch off from social media. It is hard, and we as the human beings, we like stuff. We like the dopamine hit that picking up our phone gives us. And it's sad, you know, I look around and there's people having a meal in a restaurant and they're just both looking at their phones, or everybody's standing in the queue for the coffee shop and everybody's looking at their phones, and, you know, people pushing their kids in the park and they're looking at their phone. I just think, like, what have we all become? What are we all doing?
my favourite one is when someone has their phone in their hand and they're having the lamenting the fall of society and phones sort of thing. You know, we don't even recognise it so often. It's like adults will say, oh, kids are on their phone too much, as they're on the phone, ignoring you, telling you this. Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's difficult. It's, you know, I've got 2 kids and they see mummy working on her phone, on her computer. And it's, you know, it's hard to be like, no, guys, you're not allowed devices. And they're like, well, hang on a minute. You've got a device, you're always on your device, then why can't we be? And it's...
because your brain hasn't developed fully yet.
Yes. So I think, you know, what would I change about my work? I love my work. Like, I wouldn't actually change anything about my work, but I would change about how the relationship that people have with social media. This feeling that you must be constantly online, checking and looking and seeing and doing and documenting. And I think the documenting part is the bit that I struggle with. So I've come from a fairly, you know, old school social media world where it was very much about putting messages out, and it wasn't about you. It wasn't about, look at me, you know, look at what I'm doing, look at my life. And that's the bit that I struggle with, that there's this idea that you have to document everything. Everything needs to be about you. And I love traveling, so I'm you know, I love taking photos. I love traveling. You know, whenever I can, I will go away. And the amount of people I'm just seeing in these amazing, beautiful, like, places, just trying to balance their phone on a fucking rock so they can, like, perch on the edge to document this thing, or, you know, go and see a concert and it's like a sea of phones, and you think, you're not going to look at that. Yeah. You're never going to look at that again. Just look with your eyes. And that's it. I'm only 40, right? I sound like a right old fogey, but it's sad, because do we actually need to be documenting this much? Do we need to be online this much?
But and also, who's it for? Who is it for? Why did you come to see this, you know, landmark? Did you come for the photo, or did you come to see the landmark? Like, you know, and then, like you say, you go to these places, and in a lot of ways, you're better off just looking at the photo, because the photo doesn't have all of the people taking photos in it.
Yeah.
Like,
but well, you know, the great thing about AI now is you can take a photo with people in it.
Yeah,
and you can just rub them out.
It. Yeah. Because so many people have got that photo already. Yeah. I did a thing. I went to Downing Street once, and they so you go through security and stuff to get into Downing Street, and then when you go into number 10, you have to put your phone in. Like, they're not allowed in, obviously, because they're listening devices and tracking devices, and it's like, you don't really want that in the cabinet meeting. But they all go into a box on the side, and you don't have your phone the whole time. That's brilliant. Like, there are so many places in society that should have that, and it's that. It's the preying on insecurities thing, isn't it? It's the sort of... And an old book on media that I read that termed it the Justin's helmet problem. It was kind of like, I know from being a kid that it's fine to go around on your bike and fall over, scuff your knees, bang your head and stuff. But also every other kid has got a bicycle helmet. And if I'm the one parent who doesn't buy it and they have an accident, I'm the worst person in the world. But so I don't really believe in the helmet, but I have to buy it anyway. And it's that whole thing of being pressured into it. So have you got two more that you might change? I mean, that's a pretty big change.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty big change. I think we've done a lot with the 4.5-day work week and this kind of more flexibility around where you work and how you work. And it's not unique to us, but I think it's definitely helped a lot. As I mentioned earlier, I'm really into health and sleep in particular, you know, big on sleep. I just think we've kind of got it a little bit the wrong way around. We need to work. Right, we do need to work, and I'm a grafter. I love working. I absolutely love it, but not to the detriment of everything else. As I said earlier, like I've spent a lot of hours like working really late and thinking, oh, I'm so busy and productive. Look at me being busy, and
yeah. But again, to what end? Like, is it enriching you personally, or is it like, and financial or not? But it's that sort of. It's like there's a pressure to just work and just produce.
Yeah.
And I've again, this is something I've said a few times, but, you know, most work isn't production. It's maintenance, it's reproduction, it's producing the same thing again, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like that. We don't focus on the taking care of things. If you don't take care of it, it all falls apart and crumbles and you don't have it.
For me, it's like finding the balance between... I'm definitely not in the ballpark of like, oh, you know, let's nobody work. Let's just like, you know, oh, work is overrated. Let's quietly quit and all that stuff. I'm not into that. But on the other side, I'm also not into like, let's run ourselves ragged and who stays latest is the winner and all that stuff. And it's all, yeah, I think that's all right. Like you can still work hard. You can still be very productive, very successful without running yourself ragged, without overloading yourself. But this is the thing. There's a school of thought at the minute, which is like work as little as possible and, you know, just like, yeah, do the bare minimum and do the... And the truth is like, that might get you so far, but it ain't going to get you... Unfortunately, most people who are quite successful have put the legwork in. They've worked hard, they've pushed themselves, they've stepped out of their comfort zone, they've done things that are awful and they didn't want to do them. And they thought, oh God, I really don't want to do that. I don't want to have to speak to that person or do this thing. And they've done it anyway. And then also they failed a million times and they've gone, oh God, like, you know, I've run out of money or that's gone wrong or this has happened. And they've just got back up and kept going. And you have to have a level of desire to do that because it can't be handed on a plate.
You've either got to have a really, really like brutally strong internal drive for it, or you have to have a good support network of people, you know, who are pushing you and who will catch you when you fall.
Exactly. I'd see there's no shame for me in hard work. You know, it's no matter what TikTok tells you, like you have to put a little bit of work in.
I think it's the reward incentive, isn't it? It's like how quickly do I get the reward feedback? Like do thing when I press buttons, when do I get the seed?
Yeah.
So that sort of thing of I'm finding something that I want to put the effort into. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm like you. I don't mind working hard, but I don't see the point of just doing it. There's no value in just working hard on something. There has to be a reason for it.
And I think being prepared for it not to work as well is kind of quite important because some stuff just doesn't work. It doesn't work out no matter how hard or how much money you put in or how much you care or how good you are at it. It doesn't always work. And that's about, this is one of the things of social media where it can feel like it's not fair. So you can, from the outside, seemingly being put in all of the time, the effort, everything, and actually your product is better than that other person's. And but they're more successful, and that's kind of quite hard sometimes. And I think social media it kind of perpetuates that sort of comparison between yourself and somebody else. Is going, well, oh, hang on a minute, but their product is not better than mine. Why are they being more successful? You know, why have they got this listing, or
why did people buy VHS when Betamax was better?
Yeah, exactly.
So you are involved with Leeds Library. I want to just chat about that for a bit.
So Leeds Library is in the centre of town, on the same street as Lush, actually, yeah. On there.
And all their jewellers.
Commercial Street, it's called. Yeah, it's called Commercial Street. It's one of the oldest surviving subscription libraries in the UK, and is a really incredible place, actually.
How did you get involved?
How did I get involved? I was asked to become a trustee by somebody who was already a trustee, who knew a little bit about my background in writing.
So were you aware of the library beforehand?
I was aware of it, yeah. I hadn't really been there because it's a membership library. I think there's not a lot of, you don't just walk into it, but once you know it's there and once you've been inside, it's really awe-inspiring. It's an amazing place. I mean, full of books, of course. If you're into that kind of thing, it's lovely. But it's got some amazing books in there. So they have a copy of Moby Dick. So one of the first ever copies of Moby Dick that was ever released. They've got, I think, a first issue of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. They've got a book which I was able to hold, which is from, I'll say like 1483 or something. I've probably got that completely wrong, but it's a really old book anyway. And they've got all these kind of treasures in there, and as well as, you know, modern books. It's just a really interesting place. You know, it's very quiet, even though you're right by Commercial Street. I mean, if you're sitting there for long enough, there'll definitely be a busker outside, but it's just a really nice place to go and sit and work or just think. It's, of course, got some amazing books in there. If you're into kind of Leeds history as well and buildings, there's a lot of the Thoresby Society have their kind of room there. So loads and loads of amazing books about Leeds and its history and all the incredible buildings, which I really like. I like to geek out on that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was asked to become a trustee. I joined at the same time as two other people about a year ago. And I guess to become a trustee, because it's a charity, you know, it's about what can each person bring to the mix. And I think for me, it's about, you know, I'm in marketing. I can see how amazing this place is. It's really about how do we get more people in Leeds to know about it? You know, how do we bring more people to it?
Yeah. Because it is it's obvious, but it's quite hidden as well. And a lot of people don't seem to be aware of it.
Yeah, I think the name is a challenge because people think of the Leeds Library.
Leeds Central Library.
It's actually called Leeds Central Library. So yeah, Leeds Library. Well, I think once you know it's there, you'll see it.
Yeah.
If you walk past now, there's a Cinnabon underneath it, cafe.
I was trying to think what
it
used to be Sweater Shop along there.
Oh, yeah, well, there's currently an Ann Summers there, so you know, if you look out for those two things, you'll definitely spot it. But yeah, the building is incredible. They've just taken over the building next door, number 15, which is going to become more of an event space. And
well, that's it. If they had a frontage bit, if they had like, even if, you know, a little bookstall out front or whatever, but just something that was more of an entranceway that people would like could make the connection.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's in Leeds. You can go and have a look at it. Become a member. Whittle away many hours looking at all the amazing books in there.
So where can people find you and get in touch or check out the work?
Yeah, so for Brilliant, we are brilliantagency.co.uk. Our social is @brilliantsocial. And then I'm on LinkedIn. Laura with 2 R's. That's the easiest way to find me. And that's basically where we are.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for doing this, Laura.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. And it'd be great to come down here and see the place.
Yeah.
And I have to take a picture of the pink elephant before I go because I will use that for something. Well, for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yes, thank you very much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you again to Laura for being my guest and my guest editor. Initially, when Laura suggested editing her own episode, I was shocked and appalled. How dare you, I thought, being all precious and overprotective of the only thing I have in the world. Well, not quite, but not far off. And then I thought, actually, no, that's great. I've got hours and hours of material to edit now, and it would be really nice to have a bit less unpaid labour to do. So if you fancy giving the show a go and you'd like to do your own cut of your interview, then drop me an email and let me know. Also, while I'm waffling, I'm doing a campaign to fill every workday in September with recordings. If you'd like to help out, then drop me an email or engage with a social post and let me know your top 3 preferred dates to record in September and whether you'd want to record in person, so at your work or at a mutual spot in town, or if you'd like to record online. If you would like to use the video from your episode, then we'll need to go for an online recording. If you're happy to do that, or if you are indeed savvy enough to prefer to do that, then let me know in advance of your recording. I've been here for a while now, 4 years, nearly 4,000 downloads, over 100 episodes. Not big numbers, but not nothing either. I've not been going off on wild shouty tangents for a while. I'm getting back to regular output. I have a good amount of material banked. I've weathered a few storms, hit a few milestones, and made a few records for the project. This show doesn't exist without me, and it doesn't exist without Leeds either. But Working Hours, like me, is an underused, underappreciated, and underutilised resource. Have some vision, people. My questions are my questions, your responses and presentation are up to you. You can use this limited opportunity. There's only ever going to be so many of these. Are you one of them? Are you different enough from, let's round up to a cool mill, are you different enough from a million other loiners to take part in this? It seems like there's a lot of slack left with over 800 interviews needed, doesn't it? But it will fill up. Those spots will go. I will fill them. And people will get great things out of it, and others will never know or even hear about this. If you stay with me on this journey, I'm going to introduce you to all sorts of loiners you never would have met otherwise. I'll show you different sides to your friends, families, neighbours, colleagues, bosses, employers and employees. I'll help you to develop a more nuanced and more place-based consideration of our local and global problems based on the thoughts and experiences of real people who thought and experienced them. I'm offering loiners the chance to educate others and share their stories for free in a safe environment. I'm offering loiners a sympathetic ear to hear about their work and how this difficult decade is affecting them. I'm offering you free marketing content that you can use and reuse in any way you want. My guests have picked their own episode titles, written their own show notes, picked their own publicity shots, and edited their own interviews. Celebrities don't get treated this well, Leeds. Anyhow, thanks, as always, to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. If you'd like to know more about Brilliant Agency, go to brilliantagency.co.uk or follow them on Instagram at Brilliant Social or LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/2726304. You can also find Laura on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Laurra Davis, Laura with 2 R's. If you are in Leeds or from Leeds, if you are Leeds, then please be my guest on the show. Like, share, follow and subscribe to Working Hours, and please help to support Working Hours financially. Go to patreon.com/workinghourspod to give monthly from £1 a month, or go to Ko-fi, that's ko-fi.com/workinghours to donate any amount that you would like or that you can. It's just a few clicks. It's honestly not difficult, so don't be put off by having to make too much effort to support. You can email Working Hours at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Okay, that's me. Work for peace and plan with kindness. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Follow Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/Western_Studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Western Studios Leeds will help you realise your podcast for only £25 for an hour of podcast work. Need podcast production, recording, editing, or any podcast admin doing? Need it all doing? Do you want or need a podcast host or co-host for your podcast project? Then get in touch with Western Studios Leeds Limited. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com to get your podcast made. I am available to third sector organisations, small to medium-sized businesses and individuals who want to make podcasts or create other digital audio content. Want to make some fundraising case studies? Want to show off your expertise in your field? Want some help creating your show and format, or just some support learning to podcast and getting going? Whatever your podcast needs, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page to drop me a message about either working hours or about your own podcast project.